Hello, my name is Blair, welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to the Sensory Awareness series. Today is day 12, which means we're going to be discussing something a little more theoretical. I started out this series with kind of basic definitions and explanations, but I feel like as it's gone on, the scope has sort of opened up a little bit, and I've kind of explored more topics and questions, and this video is going to follow along the same lines. And today we are going to be examining the question, are people with SPD disabled? Now, there's a couple different ways we could approach this question because there are several models that people use to understand the concept of disability. The most popular model right now is what's called the medical model of disability, and this states that disability is always an anomaly, an aberration, and that disability should be reduced or eliminated through medical treatment. This model puts the medical institution at the center, and the individual with the impairment is the problem. You know, they are a broken version of a normal person. And the assumption is always that they wish to be fixed, cured, or otherwise become normal. For example, when people ask deaf individuals,
"Why don't you just get a cochlear implant?"
they're thinking with the medical model and assuming that a deaf person would even want something like that. Movements like eugenics have been inspired by this idea that people who are, abnormal or inferior should be gradually taken out of society. I hope you can understand why disabled people were a little bit offended by this. So in response to the medical model, disability rights advocates created the social model of disability, which states that a person's disability is created by the society they live in. In this model, there are three types of barriers: attitudinal, environmental, and institutional. For example, if every building since the beginning of time always had a ramp, and a ramp was just like something that you always had in your building, then people in wheelchairs would not be disabled in that sense because the presence of a ramp would effectively nullify that barrier. And in the social model, no barrier means no disability. The medical model focuses on cures, not on quality of life. This is good for things like diseases, but not good for chronic health issues or developmental disorders. You can search for a cure for Down syndrome all you want, but once a person is born with Down syndrome, they have Down syndrome for the rest of their life, and all this emphasis, all this research funding that gets directed towards a cure completely misses the people who are already here. It misses their quality of life. It misses the point of providing them with the best outcome possible when they're already here. The social model centralizes the person, not the medical institution, and focuses on their best outcome, which might not be looking as close to normal as possible. Importantly, the social model also prioritizes self-advocacy and supportive community structures. A third model has come into play, which is called the biopsychosocial model, and this model was developed in 1977 by George L. Engel. This model isn't specifically for disabilities, it's just a way to kind of consider health in general, and it states that biological, psychological, and social factors can all contribute to a person's well-being. Later on, the World Health Organization would use this to create the ICF, or International Classification of Functioning and Disability, which was endorsed by all member states in 2001. It defines things this way: the impairment is the atypical thing itself, the disability is the consequence of that impairment, and the handicap is any problem caused by an environmental or social factor. They have a whole chart thing that you can look at. I've linked to their PDF explaining more about it if you would like to look at that. Overall, I definitely agree more with the social model. However, I do think that there are some disabilities that can't be mitigated by any sort of societal change. Someone with arthritis is always going to have joint pain, And some people honestly would like to be rid of what they consider to be impairments, something about themselves that they don't like. But the social model emphasizes the person's ability to make their own choice in regards to this, rather than the medical model, which would seek to cure everybody. who is abnormal. I've never really used the term disabled to describe myself. It's something that I have felt a little weird about in the past. I think because of the whole, like, other people have it worse than you, so you don't get to use it, like that type of thing. Like there's some kind of invisible threshold that you have to cross over before you can be considered disabled. But by most definitions of disability, I am a person who is disabled. SPD prevents me from participating in my life to the same extent that other people do. I have to put in a lot more effort to do things like hold a job or, you know, have a conversation or like exist. And in recent times, I've kind of found the word disability to be empowering. During my really intense sensory moments, like meltdowns and shutdowns, I have to fight off a lot of negative self-talk, and recently the way that I've been doing that is reminding myself I'm not stupid, I'm not weak, I'm not fragile, I'm disabled. It does not depend on me to be normal because I am not normal. It's not my own failure, it's not my own laziness, it's not my own, moral inadequacy that causes me to be this way. It is just the way that I am. I am disabled by my SPD. I wouldn't go around calling anyone with SPD disabled. People can be very, very sensitive about the terms they use relating to that particular area. Some people are very attached to euphemisms, like differently abled. Some people prefer person-first language, i.e. person with autism. Other people prefer identity-first language, i.e. autistic person. It's really kind of a sticky topic, and as somebody who really loves words and language and how words interact with society and all of that, it's super interesting to me. I love to hear people talk about it, but I don't have time to completely immerse myself in that topic today. A lot of my ideas about how to approach labeling do come from the social model. I think that people should decide for themselves what labels they would like. Like, I don't really love euphemisms, but if somebody really feels seen and empowered by the term differently abled, then I will use that for them, no problem. Because it's not my choice to make for them, and that comes from the social model's emphasis on autonomy. And for me, like, if somebody described me as disabled, I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that because it is technically true in both the SPD sense and in the ADHD sense. These are things that impact and impair my functioning in life. The medical model would definitely classify me as disabled and try to cure me. The social model would say that I am disabled by the environment that I'm in. Like, if anyone who's ever reprimanded me for stimming, like the stories I've told about that, if those people knew about stimming from the get-go and just always understood and accepted that, those negative experiences wouldn't have happened, and so my mental health would not have been affected by those experiences because they never would have even happened. It wouldn't even be an issue for me to stim. I think the social model definitely fits me more, fits what I would like to see happen in regards to disability. Because if the world had been designed by SPDers, it definitely would be a lot easier for me to live. But there are days when I do everything right, when I make time to stim, when I take breaks, when I use my strategies, and I still have a meltdown, or I still, have a week or two where I'm really burnt out. And those times, the medical model fits more because the disability is something that's generated by my own body and not by any kind of environmental barrier. So overall, I wouldn't say I'm quite decided yet on my own personal label preference, but I don't think there's anything wrong with calling yourself disabled as an SPDer because it's just true. And people should respect your choice of label just as you should respect theirs. So we have reached the end of day 12. I hope this video was interesting, maybe helped you gain a little bit of insight into the different ways that people approach the concept of disability. I think this whole idea is super interesting, and this video was really fun for me to make. Remember to do something sensational today, and hopefully I will see you back tomorrow. Bye!